we eat every day, and children can tell us about fruit and vegetables being important for our health. But what do athletes need to know about fruit and vegetables for performance? There's quite a there's quite a body of research. There's quite a number of layers to the potential and the impact. Potential impact for the benefit, but also the potential impact in impairments in performance as well if we're not consuming enough fruit and vegetables. What has when did it become something that you were much more conscious of as an athlete? You started thinking about the benefits of it to your performance.
I think it's only recently that I would have really connected it to performance beyond health. Fruit and veg, color was always a part of my general diet, but I wouldn't have connected it too much to anything beyond just being healthy for performance. There's still kind of that separation where I think the excitement has come alive a little bit more with the creation of recipes and the inclusion of different foods and the properties that they hold to actually help you to adapt and recover. I think it's actually less linked to the immediate impact or the immediate feeling and more connected to how I feel about the recipe in and of itself. Like and just the excitement of including different foods to make a recipe more appealing and performance focused, and to also know that there's properties in this that benefit my performance. I think there's a whole like psychological component as well as the physiology part to it
Yeah.
too in the cooking process, and just like, oh, I can be more creative with these, and it also provides this, and there's the learning element of it too.
Our paper this morning was around antioxidants and their role for performance. What do you think, if you were about the role, not necessarily from an evidence perspective, but if you were to think about your dressing room over the last couple of years, like would the word antioxidants be something that would register with the group, or would it be just something like what?
Now more so, definitely. I think that word has kind of become a bit more of a buzzword online, and maybe sometimes like overplayed a little bit in certain components. It definitely wouldn't have been something that you would have heard, yeah, previously, or connected it to like food performance or health. It was just kind of maybe a word that was used on some marketing. I think it's more used in marketing now. On there's the inclusion of berries, and so I think it was just interesting even this morning just to speak about it with a bit more of a lens on where the evidence actually sits, its use, and sometimes where it's not beneficial to include more antioxidants in your into your diet, even though it has all these great health benefits, and to know how important context is when it comes to this.
So if we're to really simplify it, the body the body has lots of different processes going on. So one of them is its exposure to the environment and its exposure to exercise, or to different types of what we call reactive oxygen species. So a certain level of reactive oxygen species, or free radicals in our environment, we can manage. So our body has its own system for managing that response. So it's the overexposure to these free radicals in our system that causes a level of stress, or a reactive stress. And so we've got our own system, inbuilt system, which is an enzymatic system. And then we've got our own ability to produce antioxidants ourselves. And then there is dietary antioxidants. So if our bodies are repeatedly exposed to these reactive oxygen species, then we have a kind of a mismatch, and there can be a level of damage done to our system. That's it in the simplest form. We can have this damage done to our cells, which can result in inflammation and result in the higher risk of illness, injury, and over the long term, certain types of diseases. So I've been linked to the high levels of oxidative stress. So antioxidants have the ability to scavenge. So they go around and they pick up these free radicals, which help to create more of a balance in our system. So by managing stress in our lives, by eating a varied diet which is rich in antioxidants, things like vitamin C and beta carotene and vitamin E, and then obviously the provision of flavonoids and polyphenols, it helps to manage the balance between free radicals and inflammatory responses. So then from a performance, so that's health. Then from a performance perspective, what we're looking to do is to enhance recovery. But what's really important to know is that we need a certain level of stress to create an adaptation. So the exercise component creates an adaptation, and we don't want to suppress that adaptation. I'm going to take a pause, and you take it up.
You can just throw me in there in the middle of your
Well,
explanation.
I felt like,
I
geez, I've
think,
been talking for a long time.
yeah,
And I
you're
just
right.
wanted to kind of hand pass a ball or kick pass a ball to you to take over in terms of the role then antioxidants can play when it comes to the recovery process, or like when did they become relevant?
Mm. I think that graph that we use in multiple ways, as you were speaking, it's like that stress graph where there is an optimal level of stress. There is, as you mentioned, the kind of use stress, but then there is a where it's like high oxidative stress. But even in general, that's where there's always kind of a limit to what we do, that the exposure or the dose or whatever way you want to describe it. And when it comes to recovery or performance, we're looking, especially in maybe a period where adaptation is really important or where recovery is really important. There's going to be different times in the season or during the season. The whole goal is to repair fast enough to be able to perform versus adaptation maybe in the off season where the point of it is to adapt to progress. And so there's different ways that your diet can help you to do this, as well as how you live and how you recover. From an antioxidant point of view, some of the things that we can include in our diet to help us adapt is really looking at the food that we have on our plate. So taking that food first approach and including more the likes of berries, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, things that we can include to help us just generally repair and feel good and perform well. But then there's kind of a period of rapid recovery where it maybe again in that in season period where we need to adapt from training, recover, and get ready to perform again. Where there might be more of a look into tart cherry or beetroot just to help us to actually perform, and just knowing that there's a dose component to that as well. That if we really need to progress and adapt, that we don't want to be over consuming those and just including it in every single day or in the wrong doses. And I think that's the kind of exciting part where we're starting to separate even how we build our recipes and explain the learning process and the application process of the inclusion of these foods in a really simple way that feels like, okay, this is connected to my recovery and this is maybe connected to um, the how I can show up and perform.
Yeah, and as you were speaking there, I was thinking about just giving a little bit of context around the antioxidants role. So we talk about it from a health perspective, and then you're talking about categorizing certain foods, and that's been a phenomenal space of research. So things like curcumin, ginger, omega-3, like you said, beetroots, and then tart cherries have been seen to have a very specific role in reducing muscle soreness and reducing fatigue. And like you said, there's a dose response. So it's trying to categorize all these different things while not getting too lost in all of this, but recognizing like it's not something you want to do all the time. And then when and where. So things having a very specific purpose can really help shape how you approach your food and eat. But I was saying to you before we came on this morning and reading that position stand on antioxidants that the question came from an athlete: is there really any need? If you're getting your energy, you're meeting your need for protein and carbohydrate and healthy fats, what role do fruit, vegetables, and the variety in your diet, what role does it have? So we have a basic health, and we always start with health, providing the provision of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals for our bodily functions. And then you go on a layer from that. Then it's the provision of antioxidants, and then different types of foods can really play such a significant role. Everything from the intake of flavonoids from coffee and polyphenols from different types of fruits, and even things like your tea can provide this extra layer of benefits. And the science is one component in how it's nurturing your body and the role that it has. But then we were also saying that elite athletes want to know, some, not all, but lots of athletes want to know that they're controlling every aspect, that they're doing all that they can do. And there's a real confidence and there's a real sense of assurance that I'm making all of these decisions here within a framework that's evidence-based, that feels good. There's a real feel-good factor for making a series of decisions that allows you to think, "Oh, based on everything that we know, I'm making all of these good decisions on how I eat for my health and performance."
Yeah, I think that goes back to at the start, just even saying the connection to like the psychological component of including these foods. I think the in the what seems to be coming out a lot now, especially on social media, is that there's different ways of eating and types of diet that is about like oxidation is damage,
Mm.
and that process is bad, and therefore anything that contributes to that would be bad to do, but not really accounting for what you've kind of gone through is that this is like a continuous process of um stress, eustress, distress. So it's just knowing that if we are putting stress onto our body, there has to be a period of growth and repair, and that
Mm.
that's constant. It's not just we do these things and it's either good or bad. It's just knowing like we're engaging in an evolving process, and that's where by even just simply taking that time, like, okay, this is a recovery day. What I did yesterday, what I'm going to include in my plate today can contribute to that adaptive process. And then when I go into performance focus space in my head, then there's a different way of thinking of what might go on your plate. And I think that's just how we're starting to not just look at it in terms of what, um, just carbohydrates for performance is actually now looking at other foods that we can include for recovery and connecting to those foods and ingredients in such a different way that's enjoyable and it's flexible and um, yeah, it's not, we don't have to get to the nitty gritty numbers of it, but it's really just engaging it and feeling different about what's on your plate.
And I think separating it as well, that on one level here you've got inactivity, where there's actually there's no if you're inactive or you're just out walking, a varied diet and eating enough fruit and vegetables meet your need. You do not need to be looking at cherry active or tart cherry juice or New Zealand black currants or uh, but also it's as it goes up, as the demands, if you think about a an engine that's been driven hard and how it needs to be lubricated and how it needs to be cared for and how it needs to be managed. And it's with that in mind. So there's one aspect is the fuel that's going through that engine, it being fuel that's appropriate for the work that it needs to be done and fuel that's directly relevant to the distance it's going and the intensity it's working at. And then you're thinking about the lubrication of that engine and the upkeep of that engine and not letting it, I mean, even in this kind of context, and I don't want to draw too straight a line, but the breakdown of that engine or the rust of that engine or the wear and tear. We're thinking about how that is protected. And the engine, it's actually really interesting. I met my old mechanic after a match recently, and he was talking about the engine of a car. And he says, all these lights that are coming on now in cars, he says, very often they're not being driven enough. He says, the
That
engine
was
needs,
my problem. That happened to my car. Broke down because of that.
the engine needs to be worked. It's
Opened up, yeah.
designed for work because it seizes.
Mm,
And it's the same kind of context. The body and your muscles need that exposure, and it's when it's that turnover that you're looking after it. There's the maintenance, and these are all the smaller components. But the harder you drive it, then there's specific time periods that you're looking to make sure that it's being well maintained and supported.
mm-hmm. I had a conversation with one of our program members, and just last week, and even especially in performance, there's probably more of an interest in anyone's interested in nutrition tends to be more interested in like healthy eating. And we're trying to sometimes position it that we have to kind of switch to performance sometimes, um, or connecting more to what we do to our performance. And I think even just being able to separate those days and how we plan our day out to, yes, these health components and getting more fiber and getting more antioxidants into our diet is going to be really beneficial on maybe these days, but just knowing that you can create more of an average in your week and lean more into performance on those higher demand days,
Mm.
I think can just actually allow you to see that there's room for all of this, and we actually um, it's all connected to performance more than we think. It's not just health or performance; it's actually all connected.
Yeah. I did a talk last week, and that was exactly the theme. Stop thinking about things very much in isolation. Think about how the trainings are connected to create the optimum adaptation, but also how your body needs to be prepared at least a day in advance. And if you can get, as a young athlete or as an athlete, if you can get a day at least ahead, and then think about how you're recovering previous to that session, but that it's this kind of cycle of preparing, executing, recovering, and that you're not just thinking about your pre-training meal. It was really helpful for the athletes to just begin to think backwards, but I got them to have the conversation where one athlete said he's showing up to training, he's hungry, doesn't know what to eat, and sometimes even with the demands of preseason, he's feeling a bit dizzy or just lightheaded. And I got the group to say, well, what do you need to do in that kind of context? And I know we're kind of going away a little bit from the antioxidants point, but they said, well, start with the evening before, then improve breakfast and improve lunch. And then you're not going to be in as much of a disadvantaged position. You're not kind of trying to squeeze something in an hour and a half or 2 hours beforehand
Mm.
where you're thinking, oh, it's this little snack that's going to provide all of the fuel that you need. So it's just recognizing that point about days are connected, foods are not in isolation, and trainings shouldn't be in isolation either.
Mm, yeah.
If we're to just summarize, uh, Gemma, antioxidants, and I think about the amount of roles that fruit and vegetables and the food that we eat and the different compounds that we consume, how we still don't know the extent of it. We just still don't know just how important they are. These tiny little compounds. What is your, when you think about their relevance? What are the key takeaways from a performance perspective for athletes?
I think just maybe splitting it into, so you're doing your training, you're looking for this progression to perform, fueling the system first, like fueling your body first with the energy that you need, and uh, including those flavonoids and carotenoids, including the base of a diverse diet that's rich in those nutrients, and then just get tactical whenever you need to, instead of tactical is like the tart cherry or the beetroot that we mentioned in specific contexts. But I think just the inclusion of more berries, more nuts, more seeds, more omega 3, and not getting most people are not eating very much of those in general. So I think just the inclusion of them in meals across the day, and then only getting tactical whenever you're in a position to do so. I think some people are throwing these tart cherry gels or um, maybe in the wrong context.
My message would be there is a very good other reason to consistently eat the recommended amount of fruit and vegetables beyond just what you might think, and that there is a real power in the consistency around that. For anybody who's listening, I think there's a weight of evidence, and hopefully that this conversation has given a little bit more context. We haven't gone into the real nuance, and but we do have a framework in how we're developing recipes and meals with this in mind. So that's for people to consider. Gemma, do you have any key kind of winning moments?
Um, I think a few. I think this week has been we got the launch of the program. That was a big to see our new members of the program share their goals. I think we've got a really strong community that I I do believe this next period now of the group that we have and actually are coming together is very exciting. Um, because it's like a space where people are just they're ambitious, they want to learn, they want to grow, and I feel like there's this they want to grow together as well. It felt very like we're here to support each other. So I thought that was really cool just to see all that come in this week. And I'll just leave it at that one. But I think there's been a few.
There has. And for me, I think that's shaped things very differently, and it's really exciting. I can't not mention a session I did with a team over the weekend. And I was saying to you afterwards that it was such a step for them as a group and how they embraced some of the novel ways that you look at creating freedom and play and connection among their group and setting ambitions and how you communicate better. So to be able to step onto a beach and have a conversation like that and setting, you know, and the next layer of clarity and what the standards are, I think was very, very special. So yeah, it's great to be in person doing those sessions, and that was definitely a winning moment. For everyone who's listening to these, thank you, and don't be afraid to share them with your friends, teammates, or colleagues. Thank you.